Hey, okay. Well, seems like everything is working fine. So we'll just wait a while and then we'll start at 1 o'clock sharp. I see there's a few attendees already joining the session. Hi, everybody. We'll start in 10 minutes. Meanwhile, Z and Richard, could you just turn off your camera and keep yourself muted so that we
Okay,
can get prepared?
see if I know how to do this.
It's the bottom left corner, there's a mute and stop video button.
Bottom left corner. There you go. Okay.
Speak to you soon. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first event by Ravenry, speaker series titled The Intertwined Future of Work and Life. Zenos and Richard, could I request that you turn on your camera and unmute yourself? We shall start.
Okay, let's do that.
Yes, I can see all of you.
Okay,
Thank
all
you
good?
so much. Yeah, all good, looking really good. Thank you so much for joining me today on this conversation. We're just going to keep it very, very casual. But of course, I think this is a very recent topic. I think we've seen so many changes in the past month or two as a result of a huge black swan event early in the year. And I'd love to kind of like get your perspective on what you think has changed in the perspective of work and also from the perspective of life. With all these things that's happening around us, and also how has technology helped us kind of transition into this new mode of working and living. Now, I think we have two very interesting panelists today. So you have Richard, who is the CTO of Microsoft, and I'll let you speak a little bit of yourself. But you come from like the tech perspective, work perspective. You've been working with a company that has powered a lot of organizations from collaboration tools perspectives. So love to hear a little bit about how you think organizations have changed during this period. At the same time, I think we also have Z, who's kind of like coming up from a completely different part of, I guess, life, which is the home life, right? You've been involved very much in, the real estate tech industry or prop tech industry. And, you're very well attuned to what's going on in, people's life, what they do, how they're living, how they're changing their behavior as, this pandemic hit us. Now, before we begin, can I get both of you, Richard and Dee, to quickly introduce yourself? Maybe we'll start with Richard, and also share one thing maybe that, during this pandemic period has surprised yourself, right? Like, something that you've done, something you've discovered about yourself, and it can be a good surprise, and it can also be something that is cautionary for us to all know.
Okay, I shall try to do that. Okay, first of all, thanks, Ricky and Ravenry for having me on this event. It's certainly the topical moment of our times, and glad to have Z on the panel together with me as well. This is great. So just a little bit myself. I'm CTO here at Microsoft Singapore, and have been enrolled for about the last 4 years right now. But prior to that, I started my Microsoft career actually in Redmond, in headquarters itself. So my little kind of claim to fame was being part of the product founding team of Office 365, which is now rebranded as Microsoft 365 just a couple of days ago. And obviously, we have been in the thick of things when this whole pandemic kind of broke off, and a lot of folks, whether they are government, schools, or workplaces, SMBs all over the world, who had to really find a way to still stay connected with each other, with work, with their lives, while they are all staying at home, just like each one of us doing right now. So it's interesting times, and I love to have this discussion and also engage with the audience on all the thoughts and all the observations that I have. One observation that I have for myself, that cautionary one, I would say, is that you now spend so much time just looking at screens, right? Okay, I'm fortunate. I have 3 screens here that I'm looking at any one point in time, plus my 4th one being the phone, and you just cannot let go. And that's kind of the first couple of weeks when we were doing this, this working from home kind of setup. And then you realize that at some point in time, you just have to ditch them and lock them up, or close the door behind it and just go somewhere else and do something else for a while before you come back to the screens. So just one caution there. I've discovered that myself just in the last couple of days. I've been trying to do that. Not very good at it yet, but I'll hold myself accountable to do that.
Thank you, Richard. Dee, how about you?
Yeah, thank you so much for organizing this panel, and it's really nice to be talking with you and Richard on this. A little bit of background on myself is, that I actually started my career at Microsoft. And that was back in 2000, and also in the Redmond campus. And then I left Microsoft to travel the world, and along the way became an entrepreneur, which eventually led me to Singapore. And in Singapore, I became the co-founder of a company called Hmlet, which is now Southeast Asia's biggest co-living company. Recently have exited and now am pursuing my next ventures. But something surprising in this COVID times, I think I can't understate the importance of getting out and moving every single day, like doing something physical. It's really easy for me to be sedentary. I notice I'm potentially packing on a little weight. And that's really just from, it's easy to overeat, not move, and definitely, get some workout time in. If I don't do that, then, who knows what'll happen in a month.
Yeah, I think that's also something that I'm sure all of us have to go through, kind of like taking care of yourself in this period, which is hard because you can't really go out and you get really demotivated as well being at home. Thanks so much for sharing the introduction real quick. So for the participants, FYI, we have a Q&A session slated for the last 15 minutes of today's session. So feel free to just keep adding questions to the Q&A button at the bottom so that we can actually follow up with it at the end of the call. At the same time, throughout this session today, we are going to launch polls to kind of like see what you're thinking about, to kind of like understand a little bit statistics from this group of attendees, what you guys have been doing during this period as well. So it's a bit more of like a interactive, in a way, session rather than, us kind of like sharing what we are interested in. We can also kind of like react to what you're sharing. So for the panelists, FYI, the past 2 minutes, we launched a poll to kind of like understand a little bit from the participants what are some of the topics they're interested to hear about during the session. So I'll share it with you right now. You can take a look. So of course, I think there are 4 main areas we're looking at. One of the most interesting things seems like the audience has voted. They want to hear what are some of the, I guess, new products and services that's kind of like come up as a result of this lockdown period. So I think we'll discuss a little bit more on that as we kind of like go through this conversation today. But before we kind of like jump straight into that, just want to kind of like get your idea or your observation so far on what you see are some of the challenges when it comes to just kind of like transitioning into this completely new mode of living and working, right? Which is homebound, which is, with very little barrier between work and life that you've seen in the past 2 months. Share with us a little bit, maybe like some of the challenges you've observed either from your clients or your employees or your colleagues or even your friends that you think could be interesting, for us to know, to kind of like form a base for this conversation today.
I think Richard can take that from the very beginning.
Okay, should I start? Yeah, sure. Well, Z, it's nice to know that you're ex-Microsoft too. That's great. Well, it's interesting, right? Just imagine this. Just at the beginning of your intro, you had to turn right and kind of probably shut somebody up, or maybe a pet or somebody. Yeah, that's emblematic of the whole kind of work-life situation that we're all in. In the last couple of weeks, I've never heard more baby cries, children running in the background, trying to wave to us or our friends in the video conference, and construction noises, things like that. I mean, it's literally the kind of blending that has taken place is just amazing. And I think this is really a time when it really forces us, a lot of us, to really think about the empathy that we have to employ in interacting with a lot of our colleagues, a lot of our friends in these times, because we are all working from places that it's some may be conducive to work and some maybe not. So it's not like we're all at a workplace where, you're kind of expecting an office or things like that. So it's very challenging. And I think a lot of all these activities are now occurring online. That means simple basics like connectivity and your broadband availability, all of that becomes a necessity. And one thing that's really concerning for me is also that this particular event itself, or this particular pandemic situation that's created, it's also kind of starkly showed up the digital divide that we have in the population itself, right? So some of us, we're fortunate, we have all the equipment in place, we have the connectivity in place, but there are also many people amongst us that doesn't have that kind of luxury, doesn't have perhaps a workroom just to be able to do that work, or we don't have young kids. I'm lucky. My kids are a lot older right now, so I just shove them inside their rooms and say, be quiet until I say so, until my door open. But there are some of my colleagues who have young babies and kids. They have no respect of, oh, daddy is having a phone conference or having a video conference. So I think that's the challenge, and I think it takes all of us to have that kind of empathy to be able to understand that this work situation has changed. It's no longer just like the workplace anymore.
Yeah, I really have to. I've had a lot of friends that I've been catching up with, and some companies, other company founders I've been talking to, and they have found it incredibly difficult to transition into this new phase of life and work. And so I think some are having a lot of difficulty transitioning, but on the flip side, there's some that are absolutely loving it. And I think we'll jump more into that in just a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, I think you brought up empathy so much, at the beginning of this conversation. I think it's quite important because I think the shift between, I guess, the old work modality and the current work modality and even living requires us to take so much into account, like the individuality of our employees. Sometimes in a corporate setting, you kind of look at them, or even let's just say corporate, right? In a business setting or in a work setting. Sometimes you kind of have this baseline of, I would say glasses that you look or screen your people through, and they have to meet certain criteria and standard. But when that line between work and life is blurred, it becomes more important for us to kind of understand them as an individual, right? So in your situation, I guess, Zee and Richard, what have you seen to be kind of some of the key things that you've done, maybe in the past, maybe now, in trying to kind of help, I guess, employees move into this new mode of working as well, taking into account, all the challenges when it comes to setting, when it comes to family, when it comes to time, because, of course, when you're working from home, it's really hard to tell, when you start, when you end. So how do you help, or how has, both of you helped people and even yourself transition through this period?
I can start on that, unless Richard, you want to go?
Go for it, Zee.
Thanks. So what I'm seeing a lot is that if the company guidance is good and if you have a really great manager, really great leadership, then it's a much easier transition for everybody. I see that Grab, for instance, and Gojek did this really well at the very beginning, releasing guidance for their work from home and getting this out to all employees so that they're able to understand the obligations that they have and how they should be communicating, the tools that they should be using, et cetera. And if they have all of that together, it makes this transition so much easier. Whereas in some other companies, that really isn't there. They're much more reactionary. And in this environment, you have to be much more proactive because everything is in upheaval. And the companies that I've seen do the best so far are those that are taking this head on, realizing that this is the new reality and shifting their focus and their guidance toward their employees really, really quickly. And that's allowing everybody to transition in a much more easier way.
Richard, how about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Zee. I think he hit it on the nail. That whole proactiveness of an organization taking this head on, realizing that this is a major shift for everyone, and being inclusive about it in the whole process itself. Because in your workforce, you're just going to have a diverse set of people with very different home circumstances as well. And those are the kind of things that as leaders, as employers, you have to take into consideration, whether to let's say, for example, to have just extended let's say leave of absence for people just who could not have that kind of work arrangements simply by just working from home. A lot of us may take it easily to just say, hey, I just plug in my laptop. But if I have an aging parent who needs medical attention, or just young children, and daycares are closed, and hospitals, or let's say senior care facilities are closed, that becomes a huge challenge for a lot of our workforce as well. And I think taking care of our employees' emotional health, especially during these times, because it's not just about the work situations that's changed, but also the surrounding kind of media frenzy news around this COVID-19 situation itself. There's a lot of uncertainty in how the economy is going to shape up, and I think those are the kind of things that employers have to really take it head on and say, what are the little things that we can do to ensure that our employees' physical health, emotional health, mental health are kind of well taken care of, and what are the resources to be able to support them. I mean, I'm really proud of what Microsoft had done over the last couple of months in support of that. We have a lot of communications from our leadership on the way on down to here locally in Singapore. And I think as leaders, we have to fundamentally reset our expectations on how we think about our employees' work-life situations is going to look like. And every single one is going to be a lot different, because we just cannot use that same assumptions that we had when we were all working in the office, back a couple months ago. So I think that's all the consideration that we're going to continue doing that, because the situation is so and this is for a lot of leaders out there.
Thanks for sharing. I'll share a quick result of the poll we just did as well. So kind of like we asked the panelists and the attendees, what are some of the key challenges they faced so far during this period? And I think the two of you hit the nail on the head on this, because it's all about, kind of like their mental well-being, it's all about like, the personal care that they need to kind of like, be taken into account as people kind of like start transitioning into this new mode of work. Are you able to see the results? Yeah, okay, cool. So I think more than 60% of people are thinking around, they're having issues around productivity and motivation, of course, and also staying healthy. Seems like there's 5% of our panelists seem to agree that they've been born to live through this crisis. So I guess that's a very tiny minority, but I'm glad to hear that some people are thriving in the situation, which is always great. But now I think at this point, I'd love to hear, so what is this situation that we are kind of living through right now? Do you think this is providing us a little bit of a glimpse of the future, of kind of like this is what life is going to be in the future? I think there's been a lot of fear mongering in the past 5-10 years around how bioweapons is gonna change our life massively. The damage that is done to the environment is gonna change the way we move around, change the way we consume, right? So do you think this 2 months, hopefully very transitory period, has given us a little bit of a glimpse of our future? And if so, what are some of the particular things that you've seen in the past 2 months that you think will stick around?
Do you want to go? Go for it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem. Well, I think that we're all relatively fortunate to be working in really technology-centric businesses, things that are really forward-looking, and in a big way for me, and I think for you as well, that a lot of these trends that we're seeing emerge and kind of experiencing hyper growth are not things that are very surprising to us. And some of these are like video conferencing, a lot of remote working, online collaborative tools that we have, such as Miro, like online whiteboards or other collaboration tools that are out there. All of these we have kind of been around, and Microsoft's initiative for like the OneDrive, getting everything into the cloud and working from anywhere and having all documents and all information accessible from anywhere is something we've seen coming. But a lot of people out there that were working different types of jobs, not so much on the technology forefront, are now having to adopt that. And I think that's a huge change for them. I think a really good example is seeing like how FairPrice, their online delivery system, is completely overwhelmed, and Amazon Prime is completely overwhelmed, because now you have so many people. It's not that they can't serve the existing customers, but now the new customers that have come, they can't serve those. And you have people that are in their 70s now that are trying online delivery for the first time. And I think that those types of online interactions are here to stay, because once you try it, it's really hard to go back.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree with this. And I think the biggest thing I take away is that anything that can be online, it's going to be a feature of our lives going forward. So if there is no if there is a particular transaction today or something like that is still not online, then it's going to find its way to become online. I remember that during this circuit breaker time, I still had to sign some documents, and I had to go physically into the office to sign a document. And I was like, oh, wait a second, why do I have to do that when I know that e-signatures could be easily implemented? And I think these are forcing a lot of questions in whether it's in the small and medium businesses or in different processes that says, we have to figure out how to take some of these transactions online, because I think in the future, the people are just going to demand it. I've read cases where telemedicine, for example, is becoming very, very common. And there are folks who used to go to clinics and having to wait for, let's say, hours to get their consult with the doctor. And now they get a consult with the doctor over a video call itself. And the doctor says, all right, maybe see you in 6 months' time and hopefully here in the clinic. And the patient says, well, maybe we can just do it over the video. I think that I like this experience much better. So you'll see some of that culture shift as well, and some of the expectation shifts as we move into the future as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I did have an experience with telemedicine where I went for a health checkup and the doctor wasn't there. So she just called me in via an iPad, and I have to go through all these tests with the nurses, but I've never seen the doctor, and she literally was on the phone with me for like 5 minutes. No, not even 5 minutes. I think it was like 2 minutes. Just kind of like make sure that I agree with the terms of the service and of the care, and that understand that this is a regular test and everything. So yeah, I can see that evolving into the future, I guess, and also how that is kind of like it's funny because I think a lot of these activities are actually administrative activity, and it's almost it's part of compliance. Like the fact that the doctor had to be there in person and kind of like be with you throughout the entire consult for like 1 hour. It's like part of, I guess, making sure that they're actually, going through the right processes and everything. But a lot of this can actually be automated away, right? Now, the question is this. So we do see that a lot of this digitalization has happened in adjacent and pockets of different industries. Why hasn't it happened like more, say, equitably? Right? I think Z has mentioned that, we have been very fortunate. We are in the tech space, right? We actually are, this is our day and night. We live with this technology. But why is it so difficult for people from other domains or other industries adopt these technologies into their work and into their life?
Wow. Who wants to go?
I think people just fear change. And you can't really force people to adopt a new technology except maybe in a global pandemic. So, like download this app and your life is so much easier. Like if we have to download a contract tracing app or even the FairPrice app just to get groceries or some other sort of technology, if you don't have to, I think very much we are creatures of habit. And even myself, like I feel like I try new technologies very often. And even then I feel like I'm behind lots of trends. So I can see where once you're comfortable, you're busy with your kids, you're working your job, and it's not in a technology focused industry, well, you're very happy to live your life the way it is. And then adopting technology trends becomes not something you're worried about. But that does put you at a disadvantage when something like a black swan event like this happens, and you have to adjust really rapidly.
Yeah, and the way I think at it of this at it, Ricky, I think this is really classic, right? If an organization doesn't change from within, and then changes forces upon them, then they are going to be in a panic mode, or in a mode where they're scrambling for all that change. And I think this brings it to a very personal level as well for us as individuals. If we don't stretch ourselves between a certain comfort level and try to do something a little bit different, and then when the changes happens around us and in such a acute and short amount of impactful way, like what's happening around us right now, we may find ourselves in a very tense up and then very panic mode when this change is happening all around us. So I think it's right. I guess some of the organizations are sitting a little bit too comfortable with what they have today, and the change itself was not pressing enough for them to make a drastic decisions. Unfortunately, this came on to everybody, and it has no respect for any borders or any industry, and all of us got impacted in one way or another, or in many ways than other. So I think, again, I think the organizational changes and the leadership changes will really have to come into place as leaders go through this whole episode itself. Really think about how does adapting to change, or how does introducing changes in a workplace, in a culture, becomes just part of the norm itself, so that perhaps as a species we can continue to survive on this planet.
Yeah, this adaptability element is interesting. I think like we've seen, and especially if you're in the tech space, I think we've seen like, the ebb and flow of how like different technologies are. There's a lot of resistance at first, and then you see a spike of adoption, right? Share with me a little bit, I guess, of like, let's say we're looking at all this different technology that's out there now, and that all of this technology potentially could be a game changer for your business or your industries, right? Where do you start though if you are so far behind? I mean, like we are talking about like traditional industry, let's say even like food and beverage nowadays. Yes, you do have like a very fancy POS system, but your supply chain is still very backwards, right? You still feel like a lot of this are still very manual. If you look at your shipping and logistics, it's the same thing, right? Where do they start? What are some of the things that like are required for this business to have as a fundamental to this digital transformation into what you think is the future of work? And it can be technological. It can be, as you say, behavioral change from the employee and from the leadership. But I'm keen to know how do this organization begin? This process of transformation.
Okay. Well, Ricky, it's a good question. I guess it differs from organization to organization, or where do they actually begin. But just taking it close to home right now here in Singapore and what's happening, I think we all love our dining experiences all over the island itself, and you can rapidly see that because of this lockdown itself, those organizations who doesn't have an online presence are the ones that are really struggling. And it's almost like, well, an online presence is literally where you get started. I think that's almost like the first step. If you don't have an online presence, then you're only serving those who are around you, or maybe those who are aware of you. And right now, with all these restrictions in travel and all that, it's become such a huge challenge. And it depends on the organization as well. Some of them requires some of the organizations requires a lot of engagement with their customers, for example. And if they have a method or a way to have that online engagements still with their customers, like I've seen some organizations being able to switch to online webinars, for example, and discussions, meetings, all of that very rapidly once the circuit breaker kicks in, that would still be okay. But those organizations who are not used to that, then they are the ones that are struggling right now. So I think a lot of that is that engagement with your customer, whether you are able to replicate what you have done physically online. And I think that could be one of those starting points.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we've seen this in a lot of the businesses around us. One of the ones that I've seen, or maybe two, one is grain, where they were serving almost completely just B2B and doing catering for really big companies almost every single day, really healthy food. And within a week, they're now completely B2C because they have to be, everybody's working from home. But shifting an organization completely in that direction is really no small feat. Realizing you have to go there and then organizing your staff to get there, I think is really, really incredible to be able to do. And adopting these, like say the new technologies. So for instance, there's like a company, the Bubble Tea Factory, they're completely location based. And then how do you break out of that and develop online presence and do like virtual tours or completely change your business model into something else? Those are the companies that are going to emerge from this successful. And that's from entertainment to, online entertainment to say dining in, restaurants, etc. Only if they're adopting some of the new technologies will they, which is really just like Richard said, online technologies, will they be able to survive? And the ones that can't, well, they won't. And I'm really actually quite worried to know how big that impact is going to be. Yeah, I'm very curious.
Yeah, I was reading a news article of this florist in the US, really smart. They've survived like a couple of, they've been around for like 20, 30 years. So they survived a couple of this, I would say like a depression cycle in the economy. And for the COVID-19 situation, what they did was, because they're a florist business, people buy them for like people's birthday, wedding anniversaries, etc. You can't send them flowers anymore, right? So what they do is they send them a picture of the flower. And then what they promise their customer is that they'll send the actual flower once the COVID is over, which is quite smart. So their sales has not actually gone down. If anything, it's actually gone up. So that's quite interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think like that's a very like innovative way of like incorporating technology into your business. It's not even like difficult technology. It's literally just a photo. Take a photo, right? Have an online like ordering page, and then that's it. And then you just send go about doing your florist business after COVID as per normal, right? But I think integral to a lot of this sudden, I would say, spark of inspiration and also innovation. Yes, technology plays a big part, of course, right? But I think a big part of it is also the people, right? Like thinking innovatively, being agile, being quick on their feet, being able to collaborate and come up with these novel ideas and execute them within such a short period of time. Like in your observation, I think Z, from a startup perspective, you're a multi-entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. From Richard, you work with one of the most innovative organizations in the world, right? How do you inculcate this culture of, ideation, of innovation, of execution, blazingly fast and effectively, especially during crunch time like this? You both are pointing at each other.
Yeah. For me, I think one of the biggest points here is the organization cannot be completely top down. As in, you can't look only to the CEO in order to have adaptive leadership, especially in a time like this, because you need to pivot potentially sections of your business or your entire business into new models. And all ideas are good ideas, and it's kind of like picking the right one that you can adapt into that will enable your business to both survive and hopefully thrive. And this really comes down to like, what is the culture of your company? Are you inherently forward-looking, or are you inherently just holding on to your piece of the pie? And if you're an organization that's always forward-looking, well, you probably already adapted some of the new technologies. If you're a restaurant, you're already doing Grab delivery, for instance. And if you're a tech company, well, you're already thinking of different ways you can pivot. And I'm seeing this in the startup community. There's never this mentality of, oh no, this is happening, how do we defend our position? It's this is happening. What are the opportunities that we're not yet seeing that we can try? And how can we enhance our business rather than just try to hold on to what's there? And the companies that are winning are the ones that are doing something like the florist is doing. They have this mentality across the entire organization about thinking about what this means and then how they can best serve their customer in a way that makes everybody happy, and then the business thrives.
Yeah, it's I would agree with the same thing. So Ricky, I think it's always I always say in a lot of public settings when I give these talks, right? It's like for us at Microsoft, it all comes back to our mission and our mission to empower every person and every organization to achieve more. And when we think about that and we say, okay, how do we stay grounded in our mission itself? What are all the capabilities that we bring forth to them? And if it makes their business successful, whether it is a small, medium-sized manufacturing company or a large enterprise like Coca-Cola or Airbus or any other organization itself, at these trying times, they will always be reaching out, and we will always have to proactively reach out to them and say, what are the challenges that you're seeing? And these are the challenges that we are seeing from our side. Let's compare notes and say, how do we help each other? And at the same time, I think this is a great learning moment for both sides. We are the supplier of technology, but at the same time, we cannot claim to have monopoly of all the good ideas that's out there. There are things that we do not see, and we want to meet where the customers are. So we talk to them and say, what are the challenges that you're seeing, and what do you want us to do? And then we'll look across and aggregate across what we see around the world and say, okay, is this something that we can do in terms of our products, the security of it, or the spread of it, or certain features that actually may have been in our pipeline that right now can be accelerated and brought forth to bear in our products itself. So I think a lot of times is as leaders within the organization or throughout the whole entire organization is empowering everybody to be able to say, go out there and really have that deep conversation with the customer and understand what are the challenges that they're facing, and then bring that back and share notes among each other. Because when we do that, I think there's going to be some good ideas that comes out that then translate into product features or things like that.
Trying to be cheeky here a little bit. So what product roadmap has been accelerated at Microsoft? Might impact all of us.
Oh yeah, I think you're gonna see some of them happening up in Microsoft Teams.
I see there's been a massive uptick with that.
Well, I think those are some of the things that we looked at as well, and we saw the amount of just the amount of take up that people have been using the Zoom and things like that. And look, it's great. There are many great tools out there that has different capabilities, and we of course, it's a big enterprise company, and we want to stay grounded around things like our security posture, the way we protect privacy, the way we architect our products itself for enterprises, governments all over the world. So some of these things, when we look at it and we say, yeah, these are some of the things that we do, but we cannot compromise on the security, for example, and we will not ship something that for something that is going to be prone to hacks or things like that. So I think, yes, there is certainly some effects of what we see that's happening in the market that also drive some of the conversations that we're having inside our engineering teams to say, what are some things that we can potentially accelerate and bring it to the market, because our customers are really asking for it as well.
Are there any areas of like enterprise portfolio product that has received dramatic, demand increases from the consumer segment? I mean, like things like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, we know like people, all of a sudden, these are enterprise products, right? But all of a sudden, like people like, your family, your grandma suddenly is using Zoom and you're wondering why. But like, is there any specific areas in technology that has been built for enterprise purposes that suddenly leaked into the customer or end consumer segment that you've noticed?
Is this question for me, I guess?
I think for both, yeah, for even input team.
Yeah, please go ahead, Richard.
Okay. So you're talking about some of the things that's kind of like what we've done for the enterprises and then making the leap into the consumer space.
Mhm.
Yeah. So okay, let's see. Maybe some of the examples for what we do around the security around, for example, the Windows products itself, and all the Surface products that we have that we've been shipping. It's really interesting to observe that we have had a huge demand of Surface devices that we've been shipping, and certainly a lot of individuals, family, businesses are snapping up these devices as people were going into a lockdown situation itself. But also at the same time, the kind of capabilities that we have developed for the enterprises around advanced threat protection and all of that, we bring a lot of that into the operating system for the most part, and making sure that everyday consumer also get to enjoy those kind of protection that they have or they come to expect. Because I think when a lot of us go online, there's just going to be this simple expectation that if I switch on my device itself, I want to be able to be protected from all the potential cyber attacks that's out there as well. So I think those are the things that we see ourselves as bringing those capabilities that we've seen in large enterprises and making sure that they can be used simply in a consumer device like a Surface Pro laptop or a Surface laptop itself. So these would be one of the examples.
Cool.
Oh,
Do you have any observation?
I do a little bit in the startups I'm working with. I'm seeing that the project management software and the tracking tools are becoming, they are not just a nice to have. You really cannot like jump in and get into the office and check on how the project's going now. And so we're seeing that like a huge uptick in like Trello, in what's some other ones like Asana, these Monday.com type of project management tools, Jira, etc. I would really like to see how much those are being utilized, but it's become absolutely essential for every single startup that I've been working with, that everything is tracked and all the data is there for how your projects are doing.
Yeah, I think like one interesting thing, I guess this is anecdotally from my own personal experience, is that me and my housemates have been quite crazy about like just IoT devices from the house. I think that's the first thing that you do. You can like try to like turn your house into a smart home, just because you know you're gonna be stuck in the house for a while, so you're trying to like maximize what you have. So I see that kind of like been happening among some of my friends as well, who's decked out their house basically with technology. That's quite funny. We did a quick poll again to see kind of what things people have been doing more at home, and it seems that people have been cooking and baking and exercising more. So eating and exercising, I guess that cancels out in the end, guys. So
I really hope my girlfriend's cooking is way too good. So
okay, that's a bit dangerous. So I want to shift the gear a little bit to kind of like talking about the future of living, right? So I think we talk a lot about work. We talk about like how work is affecting life, right? But how has life changed as a result of this event or this pandemic recently? Is screen time considered bad, or are people kind of like just, I guess, consuming more online, without trying to feel too guilty about it because there's no outlets of entertainment? So yeah, what do you guys think about that? And which areas as well of like life has been affected a lot by technology?
Well, it's interesting. I think, you see, as humans, we're social creatures by nature, and I think we all think of interaction with our fellow human beings. It's very normal that kind of office hallway water cooler talk, just having a quick moment with someone to say, hey, I've got this idea. What do you think of this? I think that's something that we're now missing a lot of it, and we're trying to replicate it as online as possible. it's also challenging. But I think what's really important is and this goes back to an experience I had together with some of the leadership folks here at Microsoft, was this High Performance Institute one-day course that we went through with Johnson & Johnson's HPI facility itself, and it talks really to that. Really speaks to me, because it talks to folks about how do you become physically energized, emotionally connected, mentally focused, spiritually aligned, and I think moments or times like this calls for even more of that, right? And it's a good time, because right now most of us are stuck at home. I'm doing more of that house cleaning just by a pole, doing that Marie Kondo stuff, and man, I have a big pile of crap that I want to throw out at the end of this circuit breaker. Is piling out really nicely right now. But I think at the same time, this is the moment in time where a lot of us get reconnected, whether is it with ourselves or with our family, and say what's really important about what we do. And I think when I think about the workforce of the future, it's also about having a purpose-driven mission in the work that we do as well. So I think there's going to be this some subtle adjustments as we look into the future itself on some of these changes that will take place even amongst the workforce themselves as they re-emerge into the so-called physical office once this is over. But who knows?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how people return to the physical office. And this was something that I was thinking about as well. And like, how necessary is it to our future? Certainly there's a lot of people that want to work in the physical office. They need the time away from home, or potentially they just work better in that space. But I think a lot of people now are seeing that, yes, I can work from home. I can work from anywhere in the world. Why should I confine myself to the office? And then companies as well, I hope, are seeing some of the benefits from this as well. There's certainly bad things, but there's definitely benefits that the companies should be seeing, like, can we reduce our office space by 75% and not have our workforce here and save that cash and yet still be able to be as effective? I think that's a really attractive future for a lot of people, being able to live hours away from the office and never come in, or only come in once every 2 weeks. And if that is going to be a more permanent shift, I think that would really be amazing to see how that kind of spreads people out. And do you want to live in a city when you can live a little bit out of that city and still enjoy all of the benefits of working full time? And then the other shift I think is happening, as Richard said, is people are now living in much smaller communities by force. You're either at home or you're living with your roommates, and this either gives you a lot of quality time or a lot of arguing time. So finding the people that you really enjoy that quality time with, and then doubling down on that is something I think a lot of people are thinking about right now. The people and the communities that matter most to them, and how to spend more time in those communities, I think is something that has really shifted for a lot of people.
So I have two follow-up questions to that. I think one is, I guess, a bit on the future of work and life space, right? So I think you mentioned a little bit about how organizations are thinking about cutting out some of the office space because maybe remote working is working for the employees. At the same time, I think you mentioned that there might be a lot more options for people to have the luxury of living further away in I guess more idyllic part of town, rather than kind of like the urban part of town. But at the same time, there's actually a contrarian view that says that maybe in the future, work and life will be one, where your office will literally be on top of your house, or your house is literally your office. So it's kind of like a very contrarian view of how it could be, and I can really see, how each of these have merits. But what do you guys think about, this future of real estate or future of space?
I think it'll just be a blend of the two. I think we'll just have to cater for all of it. Looking at this, at least realistically, in the I would say maybe short to middle term. I think a lot of the predictions out there is that yes, when the restrictions get lifted up and people start returning back into the office, there's still going to be amount of physical distancing that's going to take place in the office. So you're not going to have like everybody show up in the office on day one. Though I know some of my colleagues actually miss the office. It's kind of weird, but but when you think about it, it's like we will still gonna have this blend of working from home or from wherever you are to being in the office, and that's gonna persist for quite a while. And I think one of also the other shift that I see is that there needs to be an increased level of trust between, let's say, managers and their teammates and all of that, that somebody is going to be doing that work, even though physically I'm not seeing that person in the office itself. And I think I know of some organization that kind of struggle with that because they're used to seeing their people butts in seats all working at the same time, even though they might or might not be working. But seeing them physically in the office was kind of like a nice thing. And now that everybody is at home, the managers kind of struggles with that, right? So I think, yeah, that mentally and the expectations also needs to be reset itself. But honestly, I think it's just going to be a blend of that for at least for a foreseeable future for a while.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And there's been a huge shift towards, I guess, smaller spaces and smaller condos, more people packed in together. I mean, more people in the world in general. And to talk to Ricky's point, like how are people able to blend their work and home life as well? I think this is a really difficult thing for a lot of people. And now that they're forced to do it, I can see everybody's being very creative, where they're able to get more out of their space than they thought possible. And to be able to multi-purpose lots of spaces, especially you have young kids running around. How do you have an office in your living room? And I find that's really interesting because people will, most people now going through this crisis will now dedicate pieces of their home to work and will have that work area where they get the work done. It's like, I was looking at IKEA and they completely sold out of desks, for instance, because everybody scrambled to finally have this workspace at home. And I think that's, as Richard said, that will become a permanent fixture of our homes where we will have to blend our work life and our home life. How to do that really well and find the right mental space to do that and take the time and separate that, I think will be one of our bigger challenges in the near future.
Thanks so much for sharing that. I think I'm just kind of scrolling through our Q&A section. I think some of these questions you've answered, the two of you have answered a little bit, but let me get specific because I think there's a couple of interesting ones. So one is, you mentioned a little bit, I think the two of you mentioned a little bit about how like, this blended space between office and work is going to be more prevalent. But that, again, like back to the whole idea of inequality or inequity in the world. How do you make sure that people have that proper setup when they do not necessarily have like the resources to do so? And if so, what are some of the best practices companies, organizations, businesses, and individuals can do to like make sure that they have the right environment to be productive? Maybe it can be tips from the two of you as well, what you've seen amongst your employees or amongst your teams.
Yeah, well, and I think this takes all of us to be able to do this. And I think in this current situation, it's definitely surfaced a lot of the challenges that we had. Just in the last couple of weeks, personally myself, I've been quite busy with quite caught up with some of these activities of making sure that needy students have devices for home-based learnings, things like that. It's a very stark situations that this has created, and we all have to chip in. And it's not just about volunteering, but it's also thinking about how do we make this technology accessible to everyone, and making sure that broadband connectivity, a good working device, is some of the basic necessity that every family and every student should have going forward in their lives, because it's not just about answering to this pandemic and this particular lockdown situation itself, but really that is a basic fundamental equipment that really empowers that student to be able to do more just with home-based learning, for example, and also whether the adults have the kind of access to the services that are rapidly going to be online, and the kind of digital literacy that's going to be required to be able to navigate through what's legitimate websites and legitimate orders versus cybercrime and cyber criminals, cyber scams that are also on the rise in this situation. So it's unfortunate, but those are the kind of things that everybody has to take into consideration, and organizations like ourselves jumping in to help the entire nation to get better understanding on what is good that's out there, what are some of the challenges that people will face when it comes to going more online to go about their daily lives.
So I think this may be a bit of a stretch to connect, but I'll try. So I think what you mentioned about how technology is meant to kind of like help people bridge a lot of these gaps. There's a question from one of our attendees. I think this is specifically for you, Richard. Do you think closed platform like Microsoft Teams or open platforms like Zoom will gain the most market share in the long run?
This is an interesting one. It's from Cindy, right? Not sure why we are labeled as a closed platform and why Zoom is labeled as an open platform. I think we are both open platforms. How tools will gain market share at the end of the day is how it serves the customer, right? And these are all the fundamental questions that we have to ask ourselves when we think about shipping the products itself. There are certain things that certain products do well in the initial take-up itself, or in the long running serving of the customer. It always depends. I think at the end of the day, it's the people behind the people behind the products and the organizations themselves to say, how do we empathize and understand what are the customers looking for, and how do we build the next better product or the next better feature to be able to serve that need that we have identified. So at the end of the day, it's anybody's call. I think only when we put enough effort and thinking into the security aspect of it, the privacy aspect of it, the respect for all of that comes together into the product itself, then people will be able to trust the product and say, okay, this is something for me in the long run.
So Z, there's one for you as well. Being a co-founder of a co-living platform, how do you see co-living transition to being an even more important part of people's lives, rather than people shunning sharing as people adjust to the new normal of avoiding crowds, preferring to work remotely, share less, etc.? Okay, just to say, I don't think people are going to share less or avoid crowd in the future, but I do see the merit in the question of whether or not co-living will gain, people like see new work, a new way of living is possible actually. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think that co-living really is about a couple different things. One is the community, one is convenience, and one is efficient use of space. And I think that we will continue needing to use space more efficiently than we have in the past. And one of the ways to do that is by creating co-living spaces where people can live relatively close together, but then have convenient access to all of the services. One of the things I can definitely see happening with co-living is that the companies will now partition more space for the working life of the residents and the members, as opposed to just the living space. And we can see, even in my own apartment where I share with other people, having space to work and space to relax, space to connect with each other, and then space to be alone, all of that's really important. And those will be the trends for the future for co-living spaces. But will this pandemic hurt or help co-living? I actually don't think that there's arguments on both sides. it definitely will hurt in the shorter term as more people kind of draw back. They're traveling a little bit less. They're maybe working from home and spending more time in their home city of residence. But in the longer term future, this type of sharing economy is not going away. And I can see where it will continue to have a strong demand in the future, no matter what, for really good co-living platforms, as long as you're meeting the demands and the needs of the people that want to live in them. So I think the long-term future is still very rosy for co-living.
So if we were to kind of like transition back to work a little bit, we're almost out of time. We'll probably have 2 more questions. From Raphael, I think we answered a little bit of this before, kind of like around office space and how I think like the two of you agree that there should be a blended approach into providing like a more flexible working arrangement. Therefore, maybe more blended, living and working like space as well. But what do you guys think about the workforce of the future? The flexible workforce movement has been gaining a lot of grounds in the US. But with the current situation that's affecting the global, market, do you think that the flexi workers model, which is freelancers, contractors, do you think it's going to gain more grounds amongst companies who want to have the option to have different kind of people working on different kind of projects all the time, at a specific amount of time rather than having them all the time in the office?
Well, I think it's certainly a trend. It's certainly a trend that we're observing very closely. But I think at the same time itself, it needs to come with the right kind of, I would say, in some ways, social security nets as well. I think those are safety nets, if for lack of a better term, for example, because many of us who are fortunate, let's say, working in a big organization where healthcare insurance and leave and things like that, it's taken care of, or at least there is a certain baseline of expectations of what it looks like. For the gig economy, as is kind of known in certain circles itself, then it becomes a challenge. So I think it's also largely an issue that we have to all come together and really think about how does this impact the future of the workforce as well, and what are the kind of safety nets that are available or that can be put in place when not only when situations like this happen, when the work itself actually evolves, and how do this population of the workforce is equally protected as well.
Anything to add, Z?
I'm still just thinking about office space, and I'm really wondering, like, do some of these big organizations have this intention to maybe shutter some of their offices, or is it going to be business like usual? I mean, the free food is definitely a big draw, or better cooked food in a big organization. And there's definitely benefits, certainly to having like the headquarters and being able to work there. But then shifting away and having your staff work mostly remotely is also something I, as running an organization, would find really compelling, as long as you can manage people efficiently. And as long as the technology is there to manage people efficiently, do we really need offices at all? And yeah, I'm sure there'll always be a need for some office space, but I'm really curious what some of these bigger corporations like Microsoft, the Googles, even like they say the Temasek, what they're going to do with these huge office spaces in the future when 80% of them don't have people in the chairs.
Yeah.
So maybe our final poll can give us a bit more insights on that. I'll close the poll in another 10 seconds because we're running out of time. So answer quickly so you can see what people think about working from home and how that will affect, like organization in managing their space and their talent of the future. Okay. 5 more seconds. Okay. More than 60% people voted already. Okay, cool. Let's see. So it seems like people are still very, people are still very keen on working from home after this whole situation is over, and they are looking at least maybe slightly less than half a week, which is kind of nice. I think that's providing a good balance. Maybe that will give you a bit more insights as well, Z, on like what organizations should be doing. And maybe that's gonna be like your next big thing.
Just to be shuttered.
But thank you so much for joining me today. We've gone a bit over time, and thank all the attendees for all the questions. Really appreciate it. We can't go through everything, unfortunately, but really appreciate you being a participant in this conversation. And Z and Richard, I know you two are very, very busy, so really appreciate the time. We hope to be able to do this more often. So we look forward to kind of like working together on this again in the future.
A pleasure. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure. Thank you. Definitely. Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys. Have a good day ahead.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Ricky.
Bye.